An open letter to Mythic Raiders. Before we begin, I'd just like to note something. I'm not digging at anyone here. I mean no offense, I mean no hatefulness, and I really don't think that there is a problem in my particular sphere. This is just something that I've noticed, and something I'd like to bring up. Hello there, my name is Tuskeh. I'm a 13 out of 13 Mythic Raider. I have been raiding since the Burning Crusade, and I note accomplishments such as defeating the Lich King, the Fire Lord Ragnaros, Garrosh Hellscream, and Archimond as proud moments of my raiding career. My average item level is 747, I have 2 fully upgraded legendary rings, and 2 full sets of mythic gear. I have ranked in the top 80th and 90th percentile in the latest tier, with several high damage and damage while healing passes. I'm not the best shaman in the world, but I am certainly not the worst, and I have accomplished much more than the average World of Warcraft player. I am not better than you. You are not better than me. This is something that has bothered me for a while, and while I can understand its existence, I cannot fathom as to why players are so willing to assume that the aforementioned accomplishments somehow make me a better person, more worthy of time or attention or friendship than anyone else. It's understandable in a way because a Mythic Raider has put more time, effort, and love into the game than most other players, and the overcoming of challenge is an intrinsic aspect of gaming. A successful Mythic Raider represents someone who has overcome the height of challenge in World of Warcraft. That is certainly worthy of praise, but it does not elevate them any further than that in my eyes. A new player, or an ignorant player, is just as, if not more, worthy of one's time than a Mythic Raider. This I find to be true not only because of the arrogance that seems to perpetuate the mythic raiding scene, a scene so obsessed with numbers, logs, ranks and passes that a player versus environment scene becomes filled with players dedicated to defeating other players, but because of the stubborn refusal by so many mythic raiders to even give the time of day to another player who is less skilled than them. I have heard members of my own guild comment on the perceived idiocy of others for simply not being mythic raiders. This is, in my humble opinion, no fault of their own. World of Warcraft is a learning experience, and most Mythic Raiders tend to be extremely experienced players that have been playing for years upon years and have learned the game's intricacies. But players who have not yet had the time to gather that experience are not somehow lesser people simply because they don't have that experience, and it certainly doesn't sit well with me to judge a player's worth based solely off of their experience. Now, this isn't to say that judging a player's skill isn't important to a Mythic Raiding guild. Judgments must be made all of the time. One needs only glance at a Mythic Raiding guild's recruitment forums to see how many applicants have been declined, and it is this act of judging that creates strong, skilled teams capable of defeating the hardest bosses in the game. It's somewhat of a necessity. But my favourite experiences in World of Warcraft have nothing to do with being in a Mythic Raiding guild. Not to sell my guild short, they are a great group of players with a good mindset and a friendly atmosphere. But some of my best memories of playing this game come not from raiding, not from perfection, but from ignorance. Getting lost in Pandaria with my husband as we leveled up, always going in random directions because he saw another bloody herb to gather. Being a part of a roleplay guild and building characters that genuinely and positively affected who I am as a person. Creating lasting friendships with people across the world. People who don't do more than run LFRs. Some of my best friends wouldn't know the first thing about Mythic Raiding, and that gives them an extra appreciation for the feats required to actually defeat a Mythic boss. There is a lot more to this game than Mythic Raiding, and I feel like a lot of Mythic Raiders don't realise that. World of Warcraft is full of players who are not at the Mythic level, but that does not mean that it will always be that way. It wasn't too long ago that I was spending my time role-playing in Orgrimmar rather than raiding, making stupid mistakes while leveling up, and begging for gold from people in capital cities. Yes, that is something I once did. Everyone has a story of the silly things they used to do in this game, before they learned what is the proper way to do it. I'd like to close this open letter out before it turns into too much of a rant, but let me put it like this. Most Mythic Raiders would agree that ignorance is a death sentence for a player attempting the hardest content in the game, and while there is certainly a necessary barrier to entry, I feel that treating other players with contempt simply because they don't have as much experience as I do is completely backwards. They are tomorrow's Mythic Raiders. With all of the knowledge, experience, and wisdom that comes from learning the game to the extent that you can be a Mythic Raider, and yes, those traits do exist, even if you don't think you have them, You have a lot to teach people, and they are willing to learn. The existence of my channel is proof enough of that, I feel. I get many comments, many emails, many messages, many whispers from people asking how they can improve, how they can find a way into the raiding scene, because they're inspired, because they want to see that content, because they want to prove to everyone else and to themselves that they are capable of defeating these incredibly difficult bosses that require teamwork and coordination. And to you, that may be easy. I recall during a recent raid mentioning that Mythic Archimonde is difficult, and I say that from a completely pragmatic point of view. It is a difficult fight, objectively. There are difficult mechanics, and it requires communication and teamwork. Getting a bunch of nerds across the internet to communicate to that level is difficult. A lot of people in the raid responded by saying, nah, it's easy, Manaroth is harder. And while that may be true from some perspectives, it's important to note that from a pragmatic point of view, you're doing something awesome. Take a moment to realize that fact, because it is awesome. And many, many, many players would love to be involved. Regardless, just remember that ignorance runs both ways. You can still be ignorant even if you're one of the best. In fact, I feel that is a very common pitfall when you're one of the best. Help other people out, even if they're ignorant. Being ignorant is not bad. Wanting to stay ignorant is. Thank you very much for watching, and I wish you the best of luck in the world of Warcraft.